All right, well, we're here for episode 12 of the Shuttlecock podcast. My name is Aaron Rhodes, and today I'm here with Noelle Johnson. How you doing?
I'm glad to be here. Super glad to be here.
Awesome. I guess I'll just kind of start from when I had first met you, because you had started coming to Kansas City punk shows probably like 3 or 4 years ago, at least.
I'd say actually a little bit longer than that. I'd say like around 2012, 2013. So I guess like 5.
Yeah, probably 5 years. Because I remember I probably first met you at like one of the, like a Bad House show probably. Because, what were some of the first shows that you were making it out to over here?
It was like tied between the first shows I found were either like emo shows or like punk shows. So like the first show that I positively remember was like, I believe a show when like the Dollhouse was still the Dollhouse. Mm-hmm. It was like Beta Boys and a couple other bands or something. But yeah, that was in my novice phase.
And what kind of led to you finding out about those shows? Did you have like a friend that brought you out, or how'd that work?
Just a little bit of finagling, I guess. Like no one really knew about me at that point, and like I just like requested a bunch of people on Facebook, and I was like, I gotta make it to a show, and eventually someone sent me an invite, and I was like, we're doing this.
And because you're originally from like what like city or suburb did you come out from?
It's like 40 minutes south east of here. It's called Peculiar, if you're familiar, something like that. Yeah, it's like, if you know Belton, it's like a walk from there. Raymore, it's a walk from there. Little places like that.
And I know, like, usually, like, just came with, like, a carload of, like, other Peculiar folks, and everybody's like, hey, we got some new people here. What's up with these guys? Yeah,
like, most of them weren't really familiar with, like, too much, like, things of the type at the time, and then, like, we just got acclimated really fast, because that's what we needed at the time. Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember, were you in like a band with some of those people, or was it what was that band you were playing in back then?
At first that band was called Birth Defects, and then we found out there was like a similar band with the same title, and then we called ourselves like Narcotic Cure after something we read in like a fucking book or something. But like I don't remember that people still remember that. It was real fun. We played like 1 or 2 shows, and then it was a high school band. So that's.
And you were singing in that one, right?
No. Actually, I was playing guitar.
Okay.
Band. Yeah. Didn't start vocals until much later.
And so what kind of led you into like seeking out these punk shows that you wanted to go to? Like, what were some of like the first bands and stuff you got into, like just maybe as like a teenager or a kid?
In terms of like punk music,
or just anything that really like kind of grabbed you at first?
Well, oh god, I don't want to start too far back because that's going to be embarrassing. Okay, I want to fuck it. I guess like the first, God, for the people who hear this, I'm really sorry. The first band literally that I ever found in my life was like Fall Out Boy, and I was like 9. And then, I guess around when I was like a teenager, I was like, okay, this is weird. I'm going to grow up a little bit. And then like somehow I found The Locusts through all of that. And just like, I guess it was really weird because like going into the punk scene, I had like no idea what I was in for. And I had like a Locust back patch on, and I was like wearing like fucking like Jesus Lizard and like the plot to blow up the Eiffel Tower and like weird shit. And like, not that it's that weird, but it's like.
Yeah, you're probably just kind of like at that stage where you're like, show me as much weird, loud music as you can. I don't care like if it's all cool or if it sounds similar or not. Like,
definitely.
Like a lot of people have that stage.
Yeah. And I really didn't I had listened to a bunch of like, basically straightforward, for the lack of a better word, punk at the time, but like I was expecting, for some reason, I don't know why I was expecting to see like a fucking Locust type band at a show, but I was so hyped for like, just really weird shit. And I found a couple bands like that. Of course, there was like Roach Blunt at the time, and like
Yeah, that was a cool band.
similar bands, but like you know, you know how it goes.
Yeah, and I remember seeing Roach Blunt like I think the only time I really saw them was at Art Closet, and I know that was like a pretty important venue for a lot of people going to shows back then.
Yeah, it definitely was. That was, I'd say, like maybe the second or third venue I ever actually visited in Kansas City.
Mm. And so eventually you were playing in Birth Defects, and then what was it called after that?
Narcotic Here.
Narcotic Here. And then, I don't know, so when did you really first discover, like, electronic music and that kind of stuff? Because you perform as Bath Consolidated right now.
Yeah, it started, I believe, well, I had gotten into, like, noise music around 2013, 2014, and I was just really looking for a venue to explore, like, different things, because, like, at that time, not that, like, I don't know, I suppose that, I mean, like, I liked playing guitar, I like punk music, but, like, it was just definitely time to find something different, and I found noise, and then I found this artist named Prurient, and one of the songs, like, one of their, like, premier, like, biggest songs is called You Show Great Spirit, and it's like a 10-minute long like techno epic, and I was like, wow, this is actually something that I can be interested in, and I was like, then it just all went uphill from there, essentially.
And what do you kind of like gravitate towards most, like, in that music? Like, what kind of like subgenres and sounds really like appeal to you?
I mean, I suppose like just like as like that type of like inherent like music fucking like fiend, like that like thrill, that music thrill fiend, just anything that like gives me that inherent thrill that like finding punk music initially did. So like it doesn't necessarily matter the subgenre, but there's like, I don't know, there's like so many different subgenres of electronic music that really aspire to like find a specific energy and then thrive off that in a really interesting way that like is very similar to what punk does, but like to me personally, not to talk anything about punk, but like does it in a way that's a little bit more up to date. And I was like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do now.
Do you see like punk music like eventually opening up further into like using electronic and noise influences?
I mean, I feel like the two of like traditional punk and experimental punk, electronic punk, or just like things like industrial punk, just anything of the sort, noise rock or anything of the sort, just can. I feel like punk is a genre where those things can just coexist. Usually, I mean, like people do whatever they want to do in this genre, like just like techno. Like techno, if you like a specific subgenre of techno, you're just gonna make it. And that's what people do. So like,
so do you kind of like having like the control that like digital like music can kind of give you? Is that part of it?
To a degree,
like because you can really like fine tune different elements of it.
Well, see, with I feel like with electronic music, actually, it gave me. I was a little bit. I mean, like I can hardly consider myself a producer. So when like I was approached to like make electronic music, I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever. So, and it's still at this point, like, I mean, I know a little bit better, but like, I'm not, fucking a professional producer. I just like, I hear things and I'm like, wow, that's a really cool idea. Maybe I should like expound upon that as like my, from my personal view. But I mean, it never comes out exactly the way it does, but it's always something, if that makes sense. It's really interesting to see what happens.
You're saying that someone approached you about making electronic music. What do you mean by that? Was it someone that like hey, let's do this together, or?
Oh no, well, it was more so just like me and my friends discovering certain artists and like like, I mean, like, we all had like computers or a laptop, and we were all just like intermailing the idea of like, oh, what if we did something that was like electronic, just like this thing or this thing or this thing. And eventually I was the first one to like do it, and then, you know, that's how it happened.
Mm-hmm. And I know I still haven't seen you perform live too many times, mm-hmm. but I remember one of the first times was at the Sandbox.
Oh, yeah.
And you and your friend played that set. Who was that? Do you still perform with someone, or?
I don't normally anymore, but yeah, my friend Jared Corbin, shouts out to Jared. Yeah, he was in Birth Defects / Narcotic Cure or whatever, and then like he was really interested in what I did, and so was like the vocalist of that band, and like sometimes I don't think the vocalist ever actually did kind of the DJ thing that he was doing at the time, but like, I don't know, they were both very compelled by like what I was doing, just because we were all compelled by electronic music to a degree at the time. And like sometimes I need someone to like, you know, just press play. And he was always there, and at least for like at least the first dozen shows, something like that.
Because I think that was a show that Noah booked.
Yeah, no.
And I think that band Juicy 66 from like Iowa played, or unless that was a different show.
Honestly, like there was the Noise Fest at the Sandbox, but I don't think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I wasn't at that one.
The show before that in February like 2015, something like that. I just remember, I think it was Rat Bastard opened.
Yeah,
I don't actually remember the following band, but yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting bill, and
very
like you kind of managed to
scare everyone.
Yeah, scare half the room out of the already small Sandbox. But
yeah.
That was still a fun performance. Definitely. For me to watch. Do you kind of like disregard like a lot of the older Bath Consolidated music you made, or do you still like? Are you still into it?
I mean, I accept it. Like, I'm not like gonna deny, and I'm not like necessarily ashamed of it. I'm like, I don't know. I'm very interested in artists that like display their growth. I don't want to be like, I don't ever necessarily, even though like of course I've deleted a couple tracks that like I don't feel showcased what I'm capable of, but like that you can still find them on like YouTube or some other site. Like they're just, you know, I have certain sites that I display as like necessarily like a portfolio as what I can show, but like, you know, I'm not, you know,
there's still an archive out there.
Exactly.
If anyone's into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were some of the first like recordings that you made and released?
The first track I ever made, well, no, wait. The first recordings I ever released were there's a Noise EP on YouTube, actually. At the moment, I forget the name of the EP, but if you just go to YouTube and type in Bath Consolidated, it was based around this. I'm primarily actually a writer before like music, just because that's what I started out with before music, and I was in the process of writing this children's book based on like a lot of I was kind of rediscovering my history, and I discovered like a lot of like Haitian culture and like basically like, you know, like Jamaican culture and like things like that, and I was discovering a lot of religion that was based on that, and like it was based on basically a Haitian voodoo children's story that I wrote, and it was 4 songs long, and like the last song like involves like a prayer about like ritualistic suicide. It was a really interesting project, but like it was majorly like noise based. There was almost like no techno influence whatsoever. So yeah, and the project after that I launched, you know, face first into what I do now.
And so you said you had originally like written that story. Did you like originally plan to like release it as like a written thing or like as a small book or a zine or something? Or?
Yeah, definitely. It was just like at the time, I just thought it was like somewhat absurd for like a kid from the sticks to release a fucking children's book about Haitian voodoo, especially like the topics that it concerned, like growing. I mean, like as a trans girl, like growing up and finding yourself, like one of like the plot stories about it was like a woman who couldn't bear children, like that has no place in a fucking children's book sometimes, you know? Like this doesn't make any fucking sense. No one's gonna even be interested in this, at least for the most part.
Yeah, you could probably unload some of those at ZineCon if you wanted to.
Yeah. I can make like $25, something like that, yeah. But I mean it was a very necessary path that I went down, but like I don't know, after that project, I realized there was so much more than just making noise. You know, there's so much more that noise and genres that are quote unquote experimental can offer, besides just being, you know, loud and cathartic.
Has being a trans woman really inspired or like played into directly like a lot of the stuff you've worked on since then?
Surprisingly, not a lot. I've only really made, I suppose, 2 or 3 tracks in like my entire life specifically dealing with transness, just because I feel like there's so much more to my personal identity than just that, and I don't want people to get caught up in identity when it comes to my music, because I feel like, I mean, I hope that I have a lot more to say than just what has to deal with my specific identity.
And what kind of like themes and you said your music changed a lot after that first EP. Where did it kind of start going after that?
I was really interested, like after it specifically, like this, what I talked about with finding Prurient, that song "You Show Great Spirit." After that song, I became like very like enthralled with the idea that you can create something that is brand new. Like, for some reason, you know, growing up as like a punk kid, you think like, oh, punk is like the cutting edge, punk is like the new thing, punk is like what you need to be like, you know, I guess like anything even remarkably cutting edge, and like quote unquote, of course. But are
you talking shit? No.
It's just that like, you know, I discovered that like every genre of music has like progenitors, and like every genre of music has like proto creators. I don't know.
And there's like incredibly like weird and interesting pop music out there.
Exactly.
That, you know, so it just depends on the style you want to go with, I guess.
Yeah, and for some reason, like being like, I mean, like growing up in that city, like you're exposed to so very little. So when I discovered like, oh, no matter what I do, I mean, like no matter what genre I decide to like indulge myself in at the time, I can still create something that's very interesting and very new. So, what was the original question?
No, just like kind of where your music went, like sonically after the Noise EP you did.
Yeah. Well, of course, I discovered like, you know, techno and like breakcore and like all of those different genres just through like diving headfirst into electronic music. Like, I feel like I can't even go through an interview without mentioning Atari Teenage Riot, because I don't know if you're familiar with that band.
Not really.
Just like really a pivotal band in the 90s for like, I mean, it's hard to say what they were doing was necessarily political, even though no matter what song you listen to, you're going to hear a political message. I think it wasn't even so much about the message, but what really enthralled me was the fact that they weren't so much concerned with about like what they were saying as much like the energy they were putting forward, and I feel like it like reminded me a lot of what punk was doing, but like kind of sometimes fallen short of, just because you can't do anything for 40 years and always be on top of the game. So like when I heard that, I was like, okay, it just gave me like a room for catharsis that was actually legitimate, because it was like, okay, I'm just saying these things, and even though they aren't as in depth as like a fucking Foucault speech, like it's still like relevant because it puts forth a specific energy that people need in order to do certain things in the political realm. And that was really the inspiration for, like, I guess, like, every song I made within, like, the last couple of years, besides, like, things I've made in the, you know, the last recent couple months. Like, the last release I made, I could not have made that if I had never discovered that band.
And yeah, the latest release you have is called Milieu.
Yeah.
And yeah, what is, like, is there like kind of a running theme on that one, would you say, or
Definitely.
What makes that project interesting to you?
I think it coincides with the title a lot, which was like the main focus, which was milieu being like the environment that someone might exist in. And I mean, I was trying to find a way to explore exactly what environment I dealt with in a way that was not concerned with me specifically, I guess, which is so hard to do because, you know, you're talking about you. How do you deal with things that just aren't you? But like it was more so about like, okay, I know what I am. I know what people would label me as. I know the things that I've existed through. What are these experiences relevant to in terms of a widespread audience? Like as a trans person, what does this have to do with like me as a representative of trans people? As being a poor person, what does this have to do with me being a representative as a poor person? And just like things like that, and exploring like through every single song, just like, you know, what does this mean to me, and what does this mean to everybody else, I suppose.
And I know I might be mistaken, but I think there's like one song on there that has like this kind of like apocalyptic, like there are all these like tornado sirens
Procession.
and stuff.
Yeah.
What kind of inspired those elements on that song?
That track is like I mean, it's surprising, but it's not surprising that that's usually like the most well received song.
Yeah, I know you kind of put it out as kind of like a single, like you released it before that.
I had played that song a lot throughout the last couple of years.
So just kind of the reception you got, you're like, oh, okay, people like this one.
Yeah, I mean, the further I played it, the more I understood why. Because like that song, I guess more than anything, is about being like a millennial in this age. It's about like procession. I guess what I could say about it is about the lyrics are like. Like the last lyric in the chorus is "I am running from the mouth of modern time," and it's like it's about this feeling of being like paralyzed within like this like political realm that you completely understand, but you have no idea what to do, and like just trying to fight, but like you're just constantly afraid and constantly in fear, and you have no idea how to help anybody, so you're just stuck. And like I guess that's what that song is about, and I feel like that's a necessary thing to like express because people want to, you know, front like they understand everything, that they know what to do, and that they're ready to fight the fucking war at any time. But it's like we have no idea what we're gonna fucking do, and it's like necessary to confront that if we're gonna try to figure out something else.
Yeah, because maybe even like particularly as like a young person right now, like. There are just like a plethora of like problems in America that you're kind of exposed to, but there's no way you can like contribute to the solutions of like each and every one of those. So you kind of feel probably a bit helpless. And
definitely,
yeah.
And I feel like people, even if they don't even hear the lyrics, there's something that resonates throughout that song that is like definitely like. I feel like that's, even though there are songs on that album that are like maybe angrier or like more like, you know, whatever that fucking thing is that makes me make music. Like I feel like that song, even if you don't know the lyrics, like you're ready to move, and like that entire Teenage Riot spirit of just like the spirit, but you don't know anything else. I guess that's what primarily inspired that song. It's just the spirit, and like, what else do you do after that? Yeah.
And so I know you were saying that song gets a pretty good reception most of the time, and you kind of perform it live pretty often. What, like, do you have any like favorite live shows that you've performed recently? And like, because I know you've been doing Noise Fest pretty like they've had 2 already, and the third one's coming up.
Mm-hmm. I've played every single one. Yeah. My favorite shows. God, I wish I could remember. I guess the favorite show I've ever played was upstairs at Focal. Like usually they play downstairs if anyone doesn't know, but yeah, this time they were playing upstairs, and it was Sissy Spacek. It's like this kind of like John Weiss is like I guess the forerunner of that band. He's a pretty prominent experimental musician, and he just I don't know the backstory of Sissy Spacek, but I guess he just fucking randomly decided to start a grindcore band that's like really inspired by like noise and power violence and things of the sort. And I feel like that was just at a certain point in like the Kansas City DIY scene where like everyone was just ready, everyone was excited, and everyone wanted to be there, which is like surprisingly hard to find.
And as far as like the environment of the shows, like do you usually get like kind of a physical reaction? Like do people like kind of mosh to like any of your music, and is that something that like you get excited about, or do you really just kind of focus on what you're doing?
Well, see, I mean, I feel like no matter how much you like dissociate yourself from the environment, like there's a certain point where you at least look up and you're like, oh, this is the response people are having. And like I've learned to be appreciative of most responses. Like I'm not a huge fan of when I hear people talking casually about what they're going to do after the show, but that's my
yeah,
least
I don't think
favorite
anyone
response.
likes hearing that.
Yeah, but I mean, I've seen a lot where people will just stand there and like be like, what do I do? And I can appreciate that. But at that show specifically, there was like almost the whole crowd was going fucking crazy, which was like really exciting and just really like, because like that spirit that I was talking about, like even if I can't channel a specific message through my lyricism, like I'd like to at least channel that spirit. Yeah.
And and I know you recently you did this 14-minute, you called it a mega mix with Ian
Breach.
from Throat Breach.
Yeah.
And yeah, how did you first meet up with him, and what was that collaboration like?
He actually played that show that I was referring to. At the time, he was under the band Napalm Meth.
Great name too.
Right.
they're both really good names, so
definitely
can't lose.
But I just really wanted to work with him. That was a very, very casual project. Like we were like at one point, I was like, "Do you just want to fucking like?" Because I had played a lot of shows recently where I was like, I don't know. There's not like too many artists that's in Kansas City who sound like I do. So when an artist comes to Kansas City that sounds similar to what I do, there's not a shit ton of options. So usually I end up playing that, and I was just like, man, I'm fucking tired of this. Ian, do you want to like do a thing? And he was like, yeah. And I sent him like just a fucking like 15 long mix of like noise and gabber, and then he did grindcore over it, and that's how that whole thing ended up. Yeah.
I was like, just from listening to it, I was kind of just imagining you two like just locked in a dark room and just like going crazy making that. But I don't know, is recording music for you like a really like intense cathartic experience, or do you just kind of like slowly just kind of chip away at stuff?
I suppose the latter. Like electronic music specifically, even though I try to incorporate as many like aspects of I can, not just specifically electronic music, but like a lot with like the more recent things I'm going to put out soon. Like I've been involving a lot of like analog instruments and things of the sort, but like with like electronic music, it's not nearly as like you're not beating the shit out of a guitar anymore, like and just having it sound the way you want it to.
Yeah.
So like in order to like, I mean, like Procession was one of those songs where like I wrote it and it was cathartic because like I was just mashing buttons for a fucking hour, if that makes sense. Like there was no rhyme or reason to that song. I was just cutting shit up and like mashing buttons, and that felt like very similar to what I was doing with the guitar, which is why I feel like people resonate with it. But like, I mean, from like most songs I create, like it's a very it's a process, I suppose. So there's not much catharsis until you reach the live setting, which but is really enthralling because it builds up really well. Because like you just imagine how it'll hear in the live setting, and it just comes out sometimes really well, sometimes really bad, but usually really well.
And you were saying that there aren't a lot of other like Kansas City acts that sound like you. Is that something that kind of like inspires you to any extent, or like do you kind of wish there was more of a community for you to participate in?
I guess to like both to a degree. Like I'm like proud of myself for being able to like be a voice in a specific location that is like very specific and very recognizable. But at the same time, I mean, if there was 20 Bath Consolidateds in the city, I wouldn't be too pissed off. It would just push me to, you know, do something different. Or like something a little bit more, you know, I don't know. Like I would be very compelled to create things further if there were 20 more of me.
Should I start my own like noise electronic projects just so like just to
for the love of God, do it.
Can't promise it'll be any good, but
no, neither could I when I started. Yeah.
But so yeah, you said you are playing Noise Fest coming up here. It's
tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
Well, actually, I'm playing Saturday. Never mind. But
okay, man. So this will already be out by. I mean, that'll already have happened when this comes out. So hopefully that goes well, and you can give me an update on it.
Definitely.
So yeah, are there any other shows you have booked coming up? And
yes, actually. There's this like very like gothic industrial techno act that I've been listening to for like at least 3 or 4 years now, that it like was like truly on my bucket list to play with, because he or they, I don't really know their pronouns. They're just truly like they fit kind of a certain theme so well. Their name is Profligate. I don't know if you're familiar.
I've heard the name.
Yeah.
Did they play like the thing that happened at the Replay in Lawrence recently? Maybe. Oh no. Okay.
That was Plague Plague, I believe.
Yeah.
Plague Plague is also amazing, but Profligate. I don't know if you're familiar with the festival Savage Weekend.
No.
They've played that a couple of years, but Profligate is just one of those artists in like techno music and like electronic music and just avant-garde pop music that like definitely fits a certain niche very well that like isn't explored that much in Kansas City anymore, especially after like 2015 when like Negative Space was at its peak, or just things similar to that. Just like it's I believe like the first time I ever even heard of Profligate was at a show at Negative Space, an old venue in Kansas City called Detox. And it just blew my fucking mind. It was so it had its aesthetic to such a perfect degree that like it compelled me to like do more things, I suppose.
And so you're playing with Profligate coming up. Where's that one?
That will be at the venue I'm co-running with a couple of my friends, Lola Rat and Evie Gross, and a couple of other people involved.
That's at Awful House.
Yeah,
and
Awful House.
When's that show happening?
September 8th.
September 8th. And so yeah, you mentioned Negative Space, which I know was kind of like a big electronic experimental venue that Kansas City had.
But also a very big punk venue. I want to acknowledge that because there were a lot of really interesting punk bands that shouldered that venue.
Yeah, I know Beta Boys played there at least once. I never got to see a show there, but How would you say that? Because I know that was an important part of that scene, but how would you say that Kansas City's electronic and techno, like, I don't even really know like what to call exactly the scene that these acts are in, but like, how would you say that scene has really evolved since you've been active in it?
I mean, there aren't a lot of places to truly, like, for people in the city to truly explore themselves in the realm of electronic music. And I feel like that was one of the places, and I hope I can provide that with Awful House. And but it's kind of digressed, to be honest. Like, there's a bunch of people still trying their very hardest to make things happen, and I'm really happy for those people, and I'm really happy for any show they book, because they do great things. But that was definitely a venue where, like, the people running it had a little bit more, I guess, national access, I suppose. They had a little bit more of a voice. And everyone else in the city has, like, maybe, like, a voice in a certain scene or a voice in Kansas City. But, like, it doesn't reach on a scale that, like, reaches press, I suppose.
And how did that venue, like, end up, like, not happening anymore? Like, what did happen to it?
The same way most venues go down. I believe they just couldn't afford it anymore. And they had other things to do.
You said they, like, were able to pull, like, a lot of more national stuff. Were they, like, from out of town originally, or?
I'm not gonna presume too much. I mean, I knew them as like barely breaching the barrier of friends for, like, at least maybe one or two of them. That's really all I can say. You know, like, I'm not gonna. I believe they grew up in the city, at least a couple of them.
Okay.
But that's, you know, they're all about doing their own individual things, doing great things, and which is, as a person trying to run their own venue, is pretty, I suppose, inspiring, for lack of a better word. Not so much that, like, I'm trying to follow in some sort of fucking trail, because that's, you know, outdated and absurd, because, you know, this is what I'm doing and not what they're doing. But, you know, of course, everyone starts somewhere.
Yeah. And so you kind of mentioned that your new music is kind of branching off again from what you did on Milieu. What's kind of inspiring this new direction that you're gonna have?
Just, like, I suppose the discovery in, like, maybe late 2015 to early 2016 of just this new burst of artists that were a lot closer to my demographic, I suppose. Like, I'm talking about, like, black people. I'm talking about, like, POC in general. I'm talking about queer people. I'm talking about just, like, and I suppose just, like, the burst of, like, globalization in the realm of electronic music, just, like, kind of everyone discovering each other and creating new things just based on what they were hearing. So, yeah, globalization, I suppose, is the best, you know, answer for that.
But is it sonically, like, a lot different from what you've been doing, or, like, what?
It's a little
what
bit
about
more,
it's changing from that influence?
It's a little bit more complex. It's a little bit less based on. I suppose I'm trying to stray away from the punk aspect, but still have the same energy.
And so, because you said you mentioned that you kind of had your beginnings just, like, as a writer, and, like, you wrote that story that ended up being the first EP.
Yeah.
Do you have any other, like, writing projects that you've been working on, or, like, what were some of, like, the first, like, writing projects that you had been working on?
That's kind of hard to pin down, because I've just been writing since I was a baby. But at the moment, I'm kind of giving it the backseat. I write poetry all the time, and I like post it to my Instagram. That's really all I do in terms of writing right now. I used to write like short films. I used to write little novellas, but like at the moment, I suppose I'm just trying to find what fits me best in the realm of art.
Mm.
So, yeah, and at the moment, like, poetry doesn't find an audience anywhere. And I'm interested in finding an audience, not because I want to get big and famous and crazy, but because if I was to, like, I don't want to preach to the choir all the time,
Mm.
I want to be able to talk to people about what I do and have it actually make an impact.
Mm.
And, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something that might be a little different from the approach of most artists. Like, a lot of people are just, like, super committed to, like, the medium or the format that they're working in. They're like, no, this has to be a rock album,
Yeah.
or, like, this has to be a short novel or something. Like,
Yeah.
But that's pretty, I think it's admirable to be willing to kind of, like, shift your medium to fit, like, the audience that you want to have.
I feel like in like the world that we exist right now, it's far more compelling to do that. It's far more compelling to like, which is like there are like certain mediums that I feel like are exceeding other ones because their interest is far more practical. It's far more interested in people rather than themselves, which is, even though I feel like is a response to a capitalist society, I feel like is far more effective.
And you find music a little more like people oriented and like accessible.
I find music a little bit more actually people oriented in the idea that the person creating it created it for themselves for the most part. I feel like it's usually a much more cathartic experience because it's much more of an indulgent experience, like for anyone involved, really.
Mm.
But they're like, say, maybe a medium like fashion, like there's like it's much more based on trends, and like those trends are important because that's a response to something. You're reading someone's interests. You're reading what people want and what people do, and like, especially in this time that we exist in now, like, I feel like even like fashion itself has become a response to like a political realm, which is very interesting to me. And like, there's many other mediums that do that and that are trying to do that. Sometimes I feel like music has fallen behind because, anyone who picks up guitar isn't making guitar music just so they can, talk to people about why they're making guitar music, which is like kind of frustrating, which is the only reason I've really fallen out of touch with like music in general and like guitar music, specifically punk. It kind of like music and art really in general just kind of loses its political aspects when it's not about the people involved. Yeah.
So would you are you particularly interested in fashion right now, or is that something you have been like really interested in before?
Definitely. I'm just not too great of a visual artist. Most of my things are displayed through messages and, intonation, and not really necessarily what you're looking at.
Is that something like you just kind of want to explore at another point or something?
Oh, definitely. Like at a certain point, but that even though fashion is much more responsive and political in that sense, but like it's not nearly as accessible to most people.
It's kind of like resource intensive if you want to be a young person creating their own clothing.
Definitely, yeah. Which that hits the nail on the head. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you're like working on coming up that you want to talk about?
For sure, yeah. I've got a couple of projects coming up in the near future, specifically musical. I'm working on a project with a vocalist from Kansas City who's incredibly talented and, like in really the traditional sense, almost operatic. And we're going to be working on things pretty soon. Hopefully, I can get that out within like the next couple months.
Who's that vocalist?
See, the thing is, we've discussed the project very casually before, so I don't want to like call them out and like have them hear this and be like, "Oh my god!"
Oh, so you're telling everyone about our project now? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll hear about it when we hear about it. I guess.
Definitely, yeah.
But like, do you have like? Could you give any clue to like what that will sound like musically? Like,
sure. There's an artist that I've actually been very interested in lately, specifically their earlier work. Their name is Alicia Crampton. They're just like this like trans Latinx. I believe they're Latinx. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. And like their work is like very based in their culture and like very based in like, I mean, but like sonically, I suppose it's based in like, it has this like deconstructed club aspect that's intertwined with like modern composition and like avant-garde composition, which I've been like, I mean, avant-garde composition has been like one of my interests since I was like fucking 12. So like now that it's found like a niche in electronic music, I'm really interested in pursuing that.
And so I probably would have had no clue what an avant-garde composition would be at 12. Were you learning like music like classically or something, or how were you kind of exposed to that?
My parents and a couple teachers throughout school were they knew I had specific interests, so they were very interested in having me pursue music. So I mean, I discovered a couple things, and then once I like bit that little like urge, I was like, oh, how deep does this go? So I mean, I'm not going to cite a bunch of like classical artists because I'm going to get a lot of shit wrong. But you know, when it comes to like avant-garde composition, like that's usually been my main point of interest, like beyond, because like that's how I got into punk really. That's why, like, you know, The Locust was, like, one of the first bands I liked because they were, like, really weird. And I was like, oh, this is punk, but it's fucking, you know, insane. So, I don't know. But beyond, like, that's what punk was to me when I started out, was, like the forefront of accessibility when it comes to the avant-garde, at least in terms of what I had discovered.
Yeah, it's probably... Yeah, you called it like pretty accessible, so there's not much that's easier musically than picking up a guitar and playing 3 chords. So
and yet
it's a great starting point.
Yeah, exactly.
And not to like demean it in any sense. It's a very interesting and compelling art form, but like you're right, it's definitely a very accessible thing.
Yeah, which it needs to be in order to be in any way whatsoever revolutionary.
And so that's part of what inspired this one project you're working on that will hopefully be out pretty soon. And you said you had a second one that you're working on too?
Well, just to clarify, that whole mindset more so inspired what Bath Consolidated is to most people.
Okay.
Not so much like this current phase is, I feel like with that first project, that was me displaying that you can create things with very little resource. And that was the point of accessibility. But at this point, I kind of more so just want to interest people in like newer ideas that are like, I suppose I want to like take fucking, you know, the things that are happening at like MoMA PS1 and bring them to your fucking TV, I suppose. I want to, you know, take these like ideas that are like so stuck within the realm of avant-garde and stuck within the realm of academia and maybe bring them to someone's fucking tape player, some kid in Kansas City. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
And what are some of those MoMA PS1 ideas that you're interested in? Because I'll like just being like into like punk music and rap music. Like I hear about like these like those shows that they'll have there. Like they've had like Show Me the Body play, and they had Cardi B one time recently. So what are some of like what makes that interesting to you?
What makes it interesting to me?
Like what? Well, I actually just don't know much about MoMA PS1 in general. So like, what are some of the what goes on there?
Well, I mean, I discovered that whole thing through just like artists, like avant-garde artists that I was really interested in, specifically one that I mentioned before, Alicia Crampton, and it was just very. I felt when I saw those artists perform. And, like, when I saw what they were doing, I, like, part of me was, like, in love, and part of me was, like, furious. Because, like, it's still, like, no matter how much, like, they tried to, like, no matter how much certain artists try to involve, like, revolutionary tactics and, like, things into their work, it's still stuck on this level of inaccessibility. So I guess that was, like, my main interest, like, oh, I found these artists that are like doing something that like I feel personally that like people in like music school should be reading out about like 40 years from now.
Yeah.
But no one knows about it. But there's specific reasons why none of them know about it. I just know about it because I'm a fucking like loser who like researches shit on the internet all the time. But like, you know, I feel like a kid a couple blocks down the street should know exactly who these people are, and that's not always their fault, but you know they should still know.
Yeah, you just kind of want to be bridging that gap yourself, I guess.
Exactly. Just
like connecting people with bigger ideas through like the music you're making, I guess.
And not so much just like sonically. I mean, I don't want to be in DIY forever for the rest of my life because that's fucking exhausting. Yeah,
because you mentioned bringing those ideas to TV. That's
I mean, like, I don't expect to ever be on TV.
No, yeah.
But like, more so just the idea of like, you can exist in DIY, and maybe one day you can still perform at a stadium, and then one day you can go back to DIY. I guess things like that. Just like, there's no reason why any of these ideas that are being created should be constricted to a specific area. Because that's silly. You know, we're past that.
Do you have are there any like avenues in specific that you'll you kind of hope to use to bring those stuff to like a larger audience in the future?
Yeah, Awful House for one. Like, I have no interest in like reaching towards MoMA, and I have no interest in reaching towards punks. Like, I have interest in reaching towards people who have the same ideas in mind. I want to reach people who want everyone to hear this, not just a specific type of people, I suppose. You know, and I want to put like certain people on, like I want to put my people on, of course, because, you know, usually they're the ones who are not at shows. But I mean, like, other than that, like, I want everyone to know exactly what I'm feeling, not because I want them to know how I'm feeling, but I want them to know that there are people who have empathizable, if that's a word, feelings, and they're not in the same demographic that they are. I want people to understand that, like, the ideas that we're all having right now, we're all having. So, yeah.
I guess that's just a very basic, like, kind of revolutionary, like, political idea.
I mean, we have to start with the basics because, you know, that's the start.
Yeah, and empathy is a very basic human emotion that, like, you do kind of have to take to people sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, which is, you know, that's what we need. It's what you got to do, surprisingly.
Yeah. So yeah, is there anything else you're working on that we should know about, or what's coming up?
A couple of other projects I'm trying to reach. I've been dabbling a little bit within like the world of DJing, which I believe is a very unappreciated art form. And I'm also trying to involve some performance art aspects into that, and that'll be coming up in the next couple months, definitely. So look out for that, I guess.
And I know Awful House is hosting like the altar events. Is that going to be part of that, or?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
We haven't actually discussed that yet. I've just been, writing events.
Yeah. For anyone that isn't really aware, what is altar?
I don't feel like that can be properly described by me. More so by Boy, one of the proprietors of the space. And but as well as I can describe it, it's just, if you're not familiar with the Boy's work, it's very eccentric, very conceptual, and like based in just like really just even like taking a simple word and like expounding it into this very like surreal environment, I suppose. And they do that very aptly, and I'm really happy to be able to work with them sometimes. So come out and like you'll get your fucking mind blown, I guess is what I'm saying.
So altar, I guess, in layman's terms, it's just kind of like a very like experimental like art event, like performance art and music and that kind of thing, or?
See, I suppose it's more like a very experimental party.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I feel like there's a very, like, I mean, as an art school student from, like, I mean, not me, but boy, like, I mean, I feel like eventually by the time you graduate, maybe you're very interested in the world of art and, like, as, like, a professional field, but, like, also, you're also very interested in the world of just, art in not the professional field, and just being able to like exist in like maybe like a party scenario or maybe something else, and just like exploring these ideas that isn't surrounded by academia but involves academia, which is why I'm very interested in working with them.
And probably like I think I've been to like a handful of like parties that are like mostly art school kids, and like after a minute, you're like, okay, this is just a normal party, but there's art school kids.
Exactly.
So, like, you kind of want maybe a little more out of your party experience.
Definitely. So. That's what Way provides. Yeah.
So awesome. So, yeah, and that's, like, on Facebook. You can just find Alter Awful House, and I'm sure that'll pop up.
Yep.
But, yeah, I think that's right about an hour, so
that rounds everything
if you have anything else you want to shout out, or if people should like follow you on any social media, and I know Awful House has a GoFundMe for like supplies and stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So people can find that on Facebook and Google.
That'll be on the Awful House page. There's currently 2 Awful House pages.
Yeah, I noticed that. I'm like, which one?
The correct Awful House page actually has like a profile picture and events posted on the page. If you find either one.
And it's 2 words. One is like 1 word, but the right one is 2 words.
The right one is 2 words, yes.
Okay.
But, yeah, also, I don't know, I guess follow me, bathconsolidated.bandcamp.com, soundcloud.com/Bath Consolidated. I think I have a Facebook or some shit. I don't know. I don't know. Just... if you find me, find other people, and then follow them too, I guess. That's my shout-out.
Awesome. And, yeah, people can go to shuttlecockmusic.com to watch more of the podcasts and all that stuff, and follow at shuttlecockmag on Twitter and Instagram. And there's a store on the website if you want to get a T-shirt and a button. That's the best way to support the podcast.
Buy that shit.
Buy it. And make sure to watch the A.D.D podcast with Jason Barr. And I think that's it. Thanks for hanging out, Noelle.
Super glad to be here once again.
Awesome.